Okay, now we're going to get into the real fun stuff, the stuff that's important. So, how we deal with data that we've received from outside sources, right? So we're talking about when we're talking about doing this kind of conversion, we've seen data come from all sorts of sources. They come from other accounting packages. Sometimes they're coming from a CRM package, right? Like they're using Fox Pro or they're using, I don't know, Zoho or something like that, and they now want to put all their customer details in QuickBooks. So there's a lot of options there. Sometimes they just have it in Excel, period, right? They just start out with it in Excel. The goal is to get it into some kind of Excel format, because once it's in some kind of Excel format, we can deal with it. We can figure out what to do with it. So our first scenario here that we're going to go through is dealing with when somebody sends us our address, and the address is all in one cell, right? So you can see here, one cell has all of the information here. So what do we do with that? Because obviously QuickBooks, all of the ways that we've seen to import need that bill to 1, bill to 2, bill to 3 at least, and then city, state, zip. We saw some ways that we can actually separate those into different fields. Okay, so when you're dealing with any kind of data, what you want to do, what I usually do is I open up the data itself and then I create a copy of the sheet. Okay, so I'm going to create a copy of the original. I name the original, keep it that way because if I mess up, I can always go back to it. Okay, so I'm going to say import. All right, so this is the copy that we're going to import from. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to try to get the details into different cells, right? Because if I can get them into different cells, then I can most likely get them, merged or, into whatever format. But as long as I have them separated out, when they're in one cell like this, it's kind of difficult to deal with. So then what I do is I say, okay, customer name is fine here, right? This name is fine here. There might be some issues with the length of the name because QuickBooks customer name is limited to 41 characters. However, right now it's in its own cell. I'm not going to worry about it for now. Okay. The address field is what I care about. So then what I do is I kind of look through the address field for consistencies. Okay. So it's saying I basically have the street address, comma, unit, comma, city, comma, and then state zip, right? So a lot of commas in there. So I figure out that that's my consistency. So I can even spot check down, right? City or street address, comma, city, comma, state, and zip code. Okay, so I'm going to use that to my advantage with these commas being consistent. We're going to use something called text columns first. So what we do is we highlight this column and we go up to data and we choose text to columns. All right, and we're going to say it's delimited width. So fixed width means that, it's 5 characters, 7 characters is the exact width difference, but that's not what we're using. Right now, we're going to use delimited width because we're saying I want you to separate out into different columns based on some delimiter. Okay, so we're going to choose comma. Now notice when I choose comma, it kind of gives me a preview down here of what's going to show up. So I'm going to go ahead and say next, and then I say finish. Okay, so notice what it does already for me. I can see here I have the address, right? So pretty much all of these are my street address. And again, when you're dealing with a couple, 20,000 customers, 10,000, even 1,000 customers, it's not super easy to spot check, but you do want to spot check a little bit. Then over here, I do see that I have units here as well as city, state, or, cities. So I have kind of both. So this is something I'm probably going to have to deal with. And then over here, I do have cities and then some state and zips. So something I'm going to have to deal with again. Okay. The other thing that I'm noticing here, if you can't maybe see it super well, but if I click into the cell itself, notice I can go back, forth. This happens a lot when you're converting from outside systems. So it sticks an extra space in there, okay? So that's definitely something that we want to clean up. We don't want those extra spaces being imported into QuickBooks. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to minimize that column a little bit and go ahead and insert a column here, a blank one. And we're going to use a feature called trim. So what trim does is it removes all spaces from a text string except for the single space between words. So it'll get rid of this space before the words even start. So I say equals trim, okay, and then open parentheses. I'm going to select this cell, close my parentheses, and hit enter. So you can see here what it looks like. It takes away that extra space in the beginning. Now once I have that set up there for unit 410, I come down here. A little quick trick is that when you see this little tiny square on the edge of your cell, that's actually a copy down. So if I double click on it, then it'll copy it down and correct everything for me. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, right, because it copied all the way down. You do want to scroll down and make sure it does copy all the way down. Sometimes if there's some blank cells in there, it'll skip a couple. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it, and then when I'm going to select my normal cell here, and I'm going to say paste special. I'm going to choose paste special, and I'm going to choose values. Okay, so what it's doing is instead of copying across the formula, so you can see up here, right, what's in this cell, it's actually the formula, it's not data. But now I'm pasting the values into here, which is pasting just the data. So now when I click in here, there is, like if I push to the left furthest, there's no space anymore. So I want to do the same with column E and column F. So in here, I'm going to switch the trim to say column E now, and double click and copy down. Copy the cell, make sure copy down. Copy the all those cells, right click on the top cell there, paste special, and choose values. All right, and then I want to do the last one down here for F. Copy it down, okay, because there are a couple in there down the row there. So copy, right click, paste special, values, okay. All right, so now that those are pasted in there, I can actually go ahead and get rid of this column. So now, as we mentioned before, because I like to put headers, right? Because I want to put headers on these so that I know what they stand for. But I can't really put a header on this one because it has a unit address, and then it also has a city in here. So I can't really put a header on this one, or this one. Not yet. There's no consistency there. So I have to decide what I'm going to do with this. So the way to create the consistency is to come in here and sort. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy everything here, and I'm going to use the sort button, and I'm going to choose to make sure it says my data has headers, because 2 of the fields do have headers, even though these guys don't. And then I'm going to sort by column E. Okay. Now when I sort by column E, what it does for me is it creates some consistency down here at the bottom, right? So it says unit 410, Mason, Jackson. So I have them all together now for all the ones that have units, or they have 2, 2 addresses in there. So in order to create the consistency now, what I want to have happen is I actually want to shift these cells over one, right? So that all the cities are in the same column, all the states and zips are in the same column. So I'm actually going to go ahead and highlight these cells here and hit Control X, right, so that it's cut. And then I'm going to select this cell right here and say paste. So basically it just shifts all those cells over, and now I can create consistency. So this is address line 1, this is address 2, this is city, and this is state zip. Okay. Okay, now state and zip, we didn't see any fields when we're importing where we could just have state and zip in the same field, right? So we still want to get those into their own individual cells. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use look for consistency again. So I'm coming kind of down here. I see, okay, there's a space between them always, right? But there's no other spaces. There's only a space between the state and the zip. So there's my consistency. So I'm going to highlight this column and do text to columns again. Again, it's going to be delimited with, and instead of a comma this time, it's going to be delimited with a space. And then I say next and finish, and then it copies them across. So again, I want to do a spot check going down here. Everything looks good. I need to take a look if there is a space in the front of it, and there's not. So we're good with our numbers there. So now I have state, and because in that header cell even I had state space zip, it separated my headers for me. Now, as a little tip, all along the way here, it's really good to jot down notes of what you did, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3, because if you ever have to go back and say, oh, I messed up at step 5, right? You can copy, like, what did you do to get to step 5? So you always want to jot down little notes on what you're doing along the way. All right, so now I'm going to get to the state. So let's pretend when we're moving this into QuickBooks, we don't want it to be the full state like this. We want to use the abbreviated state, like NVFLCA. Okay, so there's two ways to go about doing it. One way would be to do a VLOOKUP. So if you know that your customer has been operating in most of the 50 states, we definitely want to set up a VLOOKUP. Now, if you don't know how many states, because customers say, oh yeah, we operate in all 50 states, but then you know you're not really sure when you're looking through the data. There's a good quick way to check, okay? So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an extra sheet here, and I'm just going to copy the state column and paste it over here. Okay, now what I do is I'm going to go ahead and sort by this, make sure it says my, there's headers. I'm going to sort by this column. Okay, now it puts them all in order, and I can see how many states there are. So then what I want to do is I want to see like consistency, right? So how many of these are there? So I'm going to use a quick if-then function in order to see. So essentially I say equals if. So if this cell, what's in this cell equals this cell, then I want to leave it blank. So I do a comma, open quote, close quote, so it leaves it blank, and then a comma, open quote, XXX if they don't match. Okay? So this is me typing in the formula, and we go into, in some other scenarios, into these if-thens a lot more in depth. You can also use the little function key here to kind of tell you. So it says, what's the logic? What are we trying to build the logic? So if A3 equals A2, so if it's true, what do you want me to do? And you put open quote, close quote to leave it blank. If it's false, what do you want me to do? So meaning if A3 does not equal A2, put in these 3 X's, right? Okay. And commas kind of separate, right, each of the lines of the function. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay there. So of course California equals California, so there's no X's. I'm going to double click on this little box on the bottom so it copies all the way down. Okay. And then I can see here that there's only 4 states, right? Because there's only 4 X's, meaning there's only 4 times when here Ohio does not equal Nevada, or Nevada doesn't equal Florida, or Florida doesn't equal California, right? So there's only 4. If you're only importing 4, doing a find and replace is going to be much faster for you. And we're going to go through find and replace. The alternative to that is by using a VLOOKUP, okay? And so in some of our future scenarios, we talk about VLOOKUPs, but at least this allows you to check. Now, I still want to continue to use this data a little bit. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in here and copy this column, right? And then I'm going to paste special and paste values. What does that do? It gets rid of the formulas and just leaves the actual values in the cell. Then I'm actually going to sort this data, and I'm going to sort it by column B this time, right? So I want to get all my X's together. And that way, it basically tells me, right, here are the different options. So Florida, Nevada, Ohio, Texas, California. So all of my different options that I have to do find or replace on, these are the only 4. Okay, so it gets them all in the same spot here. All right, so then going back to my import sheet, I'm going to go ahead and copy Florida first. So Control C. Now, when you're doing find and replace, you want to be very narrow with it, because if I don't, like I'm doing find and replace on the state here, if I do find and replace on the entire sheet, let's say they have World Florida gift card as an example, it would replace anytime Florida is seen anywhere on the sheet. So you want to make sure just to choose the right column. And then we're going to do Control F for find, and we're going to hit this replace tab here. So I'm going to find Florida, replace it with FL. Again, my column is highlighted, so I'm just replacing the states, and say replace all. So there was just one. Then I'm going to go back into my sheet, highlight Nevada, come back into import, make sure that column's highlighted, paste Nevada in there, replace with NV. There were two. You can see it's slowly fixing itself here. Then we have Ohio. And the reason I copy it, I mean, if there is anything, somebody spelled it wrong, or I don't know, I just prefer to copy the original. It just makes it a lot faster. So replace with OH and say replace all. So replaced 4. Then we have Texas, and make sure that's highlighted. Replace with TX, replace all. You can see it's starting to 41 replacements, so super fast. Then we have California. Replace all with CA. Now I'm going kind of fast through this. When you're going through it the first time, you want to go kind of slow. I've done this a lot of times. You want to go slow to make sure that you're accurate, because if you accidentally replace California with Texas, like, it's very hard to figure out that you did that, right? And that's kind of why you want to document maybe every step you did, because there are ways that you could easily mess this up if you're not being very precise. Okay, so now my state is nice and clean, so I like that. Now, the other thing that I noticed here is that the city field is not consistent with upper and lower cases. So this also, gives us a little opportunity to do a step above and beyond for our customers, so we can fix that. So the way that we fix that is that we're going to go ahead and insert a column in here that we're eventually going to get rid of. And there is a function called proper, okay? So if I say equals proper, and what proper does, and again, once I start a function, I can always hit this function key and it'll give me some information about that function, right? So it converts a string or text to the proper case, meaning the first letter in each word is uppercase and all other letters are lowercase. So it's kind of a way to clean it up. So I'm going to start with proper E2, because I'm going to sell E2. Now for Las Vegas, that was already fixed, so that's fine. But if we double click to copy this down, notice LaGrange, Bonham, Richmond, right? It's fixing those for us so that we have that consistency. Then I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come over to my city area here, paste special values. It pastes in all the information with it a little bit prettier there, and I can get rid of this column. Okay, next I'm going to put the city, state, and zip in one column so that we can paste them into Excel, because all the ways that we have seen it go into Excel besides Transaction Pro, right, the city, state, and zip was all in one cell. So now that I have it kind of cleaned up in the way I want it to look in these 3 different cells, I'm going to merge them together. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a line, or insert excuse me, a column here, and call it CSZ, city, state, zip. And we're going to use a function called concatenate. So with concatenate, okay, so I have this here. Now usually I like to use the actual function with this because there's a lot of information that goes into it. So I recommend using the function for this. So the text, right, 1, so basically it's saying what's the first thing you want me to display. So the first thing I want you to display is E2, right, Las Vegas city. Now, when you think about it, right, when you're entering information in, you want to think about what you want it to look like. So usually we have city colon space, or maybe, yeah, city colon space, right? And then we put in the state. So we want to do open quotes. I'm not, sorry, not colon, comma. So I want to do open quotes, put in my comma, space, close quotes. right? Because I think about it, Las Vegas is going to be coming from E2. Then what do I want to show before I have the state? Then in our next text 3, we're going to enter the state. Okay. Then, again, we're thinking about it, looking at the address label there. A lot of times people will put in, 5 spaces for their zip code. So if I want those 5 spaces in here, it's going to put in NV, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, close quote. And then I want to put in G2, which is the zip code itself. Now, if I don't put in any spaces, or if I just go from F2 straight to G2, it's going to put those two right next to each other. It's not going to put spaces in for me. I have to tell it to put in spaces by putting in these open quotes, close quotes. Okay, so let's look at we're left with. So I have Las Vegas, comma, space, Nevada, space, 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 89104. Perfect. Copy that down. Once I copy down, even though this is the cell, right, this is what I'm going to be left with, I want to make sure that I did copy all the way down. But then I want to go in and still do copy and paste special, but I want to do it over this column, okay? Because then it gets rid of the function in there for me, okay? Because some of the import, like if I copy this cell, it's going to copy my function, not copy the result of the function. So I want to make sure that the result of the function is in here, which is the actual data. So again, highlight the whole column, copy, right click and copy it, right click, paste special, values, all that information's in there. Okay, now when I look at it, no functions, it's just the data. Now the last part that you want to be aware of here is the fact that I have this blank column, right? Because I have some units down below here. So when we're importing information into QuickBooks, when we're pasting information into QuickBooks, the way that we see it, right, is we see address line 1, address line 2, address line 3, 4, 5. So we want to make sure that there's not a blank here, because if we do paste it with a blank, it will put a blank line in. So what we do again is sometimes you have to resort it, right, to make sure that all the units are together. But in this case, all the units are already together. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the city, state zips here, and I'm actually going to copy them or cut them because I don't want them to be there anymore. I want them to be here. Okay. So now what I'm left with, and I should rename these, it's the customer, but the customer is also bill to line 1, right? Then this is actually address line 2. This is address line 3. And then this would be address line 4. Whoops. Now, of course, when I'm pasting this into QuickBooks, if there's a blank after, right, my information, then I don't really care about that. I just want to make sure that there isn't a blank before. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and do paste from Excel and paste these into QuickBooks. So I'm going to go in here, customers, in my customer center, paste from Excel. I'm going to switch it over to only unsaved customers, right, so that I just have the unsaved customers in here, or no data in here, so pasting's a lot easier. I can paste from the top line and I don't have any problems. So I'm going to copy the customer column, and I'm going to put it in here as the name. Okay, I don't have any jobs in this scenario. I can also paste it in as a company name if I want to right now as well. Okay, then we're going to go over to bill to line 1. I can also paste it there because the bill to line 1 is going to be the same as the company. And then I can also paste it to ship to line 1 if I wanted to as well. Okay, but I'm not going to fill in ship to line 1 for now. So then we move on to address line 2. So we're going to copy this column and paste it into bill to 2. And we're going to come in here and take address line 3 and paste it into address line 3 and 4. You still have to copy the entire column, right? Because if I just copied those bottom 4, it would stick it, it would only paste in the bottom 4. And I do want it to copy in all, like leave all those blanks, but fill in just the bottom down here. So I did paste all of those in, and then I can go ahead and say save changes. 52 customers records have been saved, no errors, which is awesome. And then I can go to my customer list now and check out my details. So you can see here, I have World RMA Solution. Here's their city, state, zip with the spaces in there. Again, if you don't want the spaces, don't put the spaces in. Just put one space. You don't have to do 5. And then what's the name of one of the ones that has a unit? So World of Toys. So World of Toys here, when I look at it, it has World of Toys with my unit in there, and it separates it down here. Now, one of the things that you can also note here is if you do the edit, right, QuickBooks actually is kind of smart, right, and it separates it out for you into city, state, zip when you're looking at it from the address details information or the address information here. So it does separate it into those cells that understand city, state, zip, but of course the way that we have to paste it in is all in one cell.